In a chocolate shop in London, Paris, or New York, cocoa becomes luxury. It is wrapped in gold foil, placed behind glass, and sold as comfort, romance, celebration, and pleasure. But before chocolate becomes luxury, it begins somewhere else. Far from the polished shelves, far from the brands, far from the cities where chocolate is sold at prices the farmer may never fully understand. It begins in the forest belts of Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, with a farmer, a cutlass, a cocoa pod, and a price he does not control. Here, cocoa does not begin as pleasure. It begins with soil, with sweat, with trees cared for year after year, with pods cut by hand, beans fermented, dried, packed, and carried. In Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, cocoa is more than a crop. It is school fees, hospital bills, funerals, weddings, debt, hope, and for millions of families, survival. Together, these two West African nations sit at the center of the global cocoa supply. The world's chocolate industry depends on them. But here is the paradox. The countries that grow the cocoa do not control the chocolate. The farmer grows the bean. The trader moves it. The processor transforms it. The brand sells it. And by the time cocoa becomes chocolate, most of the value has already left the farm. This is the story of how Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire tried to change that. Some called it cooperation. Others saw something bigger, the beginning of a cocoa OPEC. But can two African countries really change the price of chocolate? Or will the global market break their alliance before it changes the farmer's life? Somewhere far from the cocoa farm, the price is moving. On a screen, in a trading room, inside a market the farmer does not see, a line goes up, a line goes down, and with it, the future of millions of families changes. But the farmer is not in the room. He does not control the screen. He does not set the price. He waits. For the cocoa farmer, price is not theory. It is the difference between sending a child to school or delaying the fees, between buying fertilizer or watching the farm weaken, between repairing a roof or waiting for another rainy season. A farmer can spend years caring for cocoa trees. He can prune, weed, harvest, ferment, dry, and carry. But after all that work, the final question is simple. How much will the buyer pay? And that answer is shaped far beyond the village. Cocoa is not only a crop, it is a commodity. It moves through contracts, forecasts, futures markets, currency shifts, weather reports, crop estimates, and corporate buying decisions. To the farmer, the transaction may look local, a bag of cocoa, a scale, a buyer, a receipt. But behind that moment is a global machine, and Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire are connected to it whether they like it or not. The structure is simple. The farmer produces the raw bean, but the highest value is created after the bean leaves the farm. The bean is transported, exported, ground, processed, mixed, molded, wrapped, branded, advertised, and sold. The further cocoa moves from the farm, the more power enters the chain. The closer you are to the final product, the more value you can capture. This is why the chocolate economy is not only about production. It is about control. Control of processing, control of branding, control of distribution, control of finance, control of information. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire have land, farmers, and cocoa trees. But the global chocolate industry has contracts, capital, factories, brands, and market access. And that imbalance is the heart of the price-taker problem. For decades, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire stood beside each other as cocoa giants, but they often sold into the same global market separately. Each country wanted to protect its farmers. Each country wanted export revenue. Each country wanted buyers to choose its cocoa, but when two major producers compete against each other, the buyer gains leverage. If one country asks for more, the buyer can look to the other. If one country holds back supply, the buyer can wait, negotiate, or search for alternatives. This is the trap of commodity dependence. You can produce a large share of the world's supply and still struggle to control the price, because production alone does not guarantee power. Coordination does. Eventually, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire began to understand the deeper problem. They were not weak because they lacked cocoa. They were weak because they lacked coordination. They were powerful in production, but divided in negotiation. Together, they could influence the world's cocoa supply. Separately, they could be played against each other. So the two countries moved from frustration to formal action. In 2018, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire signed the Abidjan Declaration. It was more than a diplomatic document. It was a signal. The two largest cocoa-producing countries were no longer willing to behave only as isolated suppliers. They wanted to coordinate, to defend farmer income, to strengthen their position in the international cocoa market, and to send a message to the world. The countries that grow the cocoa were beginning to organize. Out of this cooperation came the Côte d'Ivoire-Ghana Cocoa Initiative. Its home would be in Accra. Its mission was simple in language, but difficult in practice: to coordinate cocoa policies, to protect farmer income, to strengthen the voice of producing countries, to promote processing and consumption, and to defend the common interests of Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire in a market dominated by buyers, traders, processors, and chocolate companies. For the first time, the two cocoa giants were building an institution around their shared power. Not just an agreement, a structure. Not just speeches, a permanent platform. A place where cocoa diplomacy could become economic strategy. Then came the boldest move: the Living Income Differential. A fixed premium of $400 for every ton of cocoa sold from Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. It was designed to push more value back toward the farmer. It was a simple idea with a powerful message. No more cheap cocoa built on poor farmers. No more global chocolate comfort funded by rural struggle. If buyers wanted cocoa from the world's two biggest producers, they would have to pay more. Not as charity, not as aid, but as part of the price. For farmers, the promise was personal. A better price could mean school fees paid on time, a roof repaired before the rains, fertilizer bought before the trees weakened, medicine purchased before sickness became crisis. But on the other side of the world, the announcement landed differently. For global buyers, the Living Income Differential meant higher costs. For traders, it meant new calculations. For processors, it meant another layer of pricing. For chocolate companies, it raised one question: who would absorb the cost? The buyer, the processor, the brand, the retailer, or the consumer? This was where the alliance faced its first real test. It was one thing to announce a premium. It was another thing to make the global chocolate system accept it without finding a way around it. Because markets do not always fight directly. They adjust. If one part of the price rises, another part can fall. If producers demand more, buyers can search for discounts elsewhere. If governments try to hold the line, traders can wait. The alliance had created a weapon, but the global market was already looking for its defense. Then came the border problem. When cocoa prices move, cocoa moves with them. Not always through official channels, not always through ports, not always in daylight. Sometimes it moves quietly. across roads, across rivers, across borders. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire are separated by a border, but their cocoa regions are deeply connected. Families cross, traders cross, languages cross, goods cross. And when the price of cocoa is different on one side, cocoa itself begins to cross. For governments, this is smuggling. For traders, it is opportunity. For farmers, it may feel like survival. The logic is simple. If one side of the border pays more, cocoa will be pulled toward that side. If one side pays late, cocoa will search for faster money. If one buyer offers cash today and another promises payment tomorrow, the farmer must decide what survival requires. This is where policy meets reality. A price announced in Accra, a price announced in Abidjan, a trader doing calculations, a farmer looking at school fees, a sack of cocoa waiting in the corner. Smuggling is not only a law enforcement problem, it is a price problem, a trust problem, a national revenue problem, and a warning that the official system may be losing control. Because cocoa smuggling does not appear from nowhere. It grows from incentives, from price gaps, from delayed payments, from survival pressure, from a market that rewards the movement of beans more than the patience of farmers. By 2026, the Cocoa Alliance had reached a new test. The idea was no longer only to speak together. It was to move together. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire had learned that cooperation without coordination was not enough. A declaration could inspire. A premium could challenge the market. A summit could send a message. But if the two countries still set prices differently, managed crop calendars differently, and faced buyers separately, the market would keep finding the gaps. So in Abidjan, the two cocoa giants returned to the table. This time, the goal was deeper, not just partnership, alignment. They agreed to harmonize cocoa farm gate pricing policies, to coordinate more closely, to reduce unhealthy competition between them, to align the way they approached the cocoa market. It sounded technical, but the meaning was political and economic. If the two countries could align their prices, they could reduce the incentive for cocoa to cross the border. If they could coordinate before announcing prices, they could reduce market confusion. If they could share market intelligence, they could negotiate from a stronger position, not blindly, not separately, but strategically. This was the new gamble. The alliance had to become practical. It had to enter the price itself. Every chocolate bar begins with a bean, but every bean carries a question. Who controls its value? The farmer who grows it, the country that exports it, the trader who contracts it, the company that brands it, or the consumer who pays for it at the end. For Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, this is the question behind the Cocoa Alliance. It is not only about price, it is about power. The alliance revealed a hard truth. Producing a commodity is not the same as controlling it. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire can grow the cocoa. They can harvest the pods, dry the beans, load the sacks, ship the crop. But unless they control more of the pricing, processing, branding, and negotiation, much of the value will continue to move elsewhere. This is the old story of raw materials. Africa produces, others transform. Africa exports, others brand. Africa carries the risk, others capture the margin. Cocoa is only one example, but it is one of the clearest, because the contrast is so visible. A farmer's hand, a luxury chocolate shelf, one crop, two worlds. So the question remains, can Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire become the true power behind chocolate? Or will they remain the giants who grow the world's cocoa, while others decide what it is worth? The world may love chocolate, But the real story begins before the sweetness. It begins with the bean and with the people who grow it.